I just kind of approach someone and then try and have a really normal chat with them to find out a bit more about what they do. So, what are you doing? Like, what is your work? How long have you been here? So some very easy questions just to kind of warm them up, and then I'll see how they respond. And then I just kind of build up a very organic conversation with them. So it's not really an interview kind of sit down. It's all very, very casual and informal, and we try and keep it quite fun. And I think the key really is to be very open and curious every time we approach a stranger, and really just to kind of be able to listen to
the whole adventure of just picking a random neighborhood and embracing surprise and uncertainty and just being open to these opportunities and seeing some of the people that we would usually pass by without recognizing them. And that's actually the part that I personally enjoy the most. As I said, I've been in Hong Kong for a long time, but through this project, I've had the chance to discover many different neighborhoods where I've never set foot, and I realized how I was really living in a bubble for so many years.
Like why we did it in the first place, which are certain values that I think we both had, which we really wanted to express in a creative medium. So, for example, we really, really wanted to kind of show gratitude and recognition to people like shift workers who are, there are people surrounding us every day, making our lives more comfortable and more pleasant. And often we don't, and I was guilty of this, like we don't see a lot of people and we take a lot of things for granted maybe. So to be able to kind of use this project in a very small way to put these individuals who are working tirelessly for Hong Kong in the spotlight is something that's kind of very, very special, special for me.
I have benefited so much from Hong Kong in all possible ways. I feel that this is a small way for me to try and give back a little bit to the community that has welcomed me so generously over the years.
So the idea of this project, it was really a lockdown project for me in the UK. Fortunately, the UK didn't lock down for too long, so they only got 3 books. If we'd have done a Hong Kong thing, you'd be buying a set of 25. We didn't go in for it in that way. So the idea was to go into the library. I'm a member of the London Library in St James's Square, which is the oldest private library in the UK, founded by Horace Walpole. Dickens was a member, Virginia Woolf was a member, T.S. Eliot was a member, I'm a member, so greatness continues.
I just want to say that I miss you all so much, and I'm just thrilled to be able to see you guys at this event and just seeing another important step in the process of creating the Ingat anthology. And so I guess I just want to say that I hope that this anthology paves the way for more publications like this. So I think we've said this before in meetings, like the Ingat anthology is the first, hopefully the first of many publications to come. And I also hope that in the future that there will not only be recognition of domestic workers' creativity, but that there will also be meaningful support of domestic workers' creative initiatives. So that's my dream for the domestic worker community in Hong Kong and allies as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Judy. And once again, thank you so much for joining us today. And this is very memorable event for us migrant writers of Hong Kong. Sensational Hong Kong, belonging, the Hong Kong University and Brock University.
But also what I enjoyed was that Harry Harvey is this full of colour when he's describing the different distinctions of Chinese opera, and I think he's rather relieved that, like Paul's books, he gets the abridged version. Yeah. And but he also, he's wandering around Hong Kong. He's giving us this insight. But when he meets Sun Yat-sen, what I notice is that the colour disappears. He's a bit in awe, isn't he?
Well, I think all of these writers, and again, Julia will know more about this because she sort of studied travel writing academics for years. That everyone, of course, is coming with an image of China in their head. Yeah. Right? So they're coming with certain preconceived notions about China, the Chinese, Hong Kong, British colonialism and mainland China. And Hervey certainly, he's already written 2 exoticized books, one about India and one about French Indochina, without ever going to those places. He just kind of imagined them from magazine articles and things like that. And he's walking around in Savannah. There is a biography of him that's quite good. He's walking around in Savannah, dressed head to foot in sort of Chinese Mandarin robes and things that he's bought at an antique store in Chinatown, in Charleston, Georgia. He's gone there and he bought these robes. He walks around, kind of, pretending to be Chinese, trying to sort of, imbibe by osmosis the kind of, wonderful imperial heritage of the Qing dynasty or something, right? And then write a story. So of course, when he gets to China, whatever he encounters, he's going to exoticize it because he doesn't want to be that disappointed, does he? So he's looking all the time for the exotic.
But I mean, that's a beautiful thing about travel writing in a way. I mean, there's this old saying that those, that learn about themselves are the best travelers, when they're encountering that sort of otherness. The bad traveler basically goes to a place and, with those preconceptions, those ideologies, those cliches, and that's what they see, and that's what you get in their travel writing. And then you have the good traveler, quote unquote, who actually realizes, something about who's the self, who's the other, how am I seeing that other person, that starts to basically think about how they see and about their cliches, are they oriented as it? And what I find wonderful about travel writing in all these books that Poetic has, there are always these snippets. Sometimes it's just a sentence, but you can see that introspection actually happens.
Also, we made huge research about children's books about war. There are so many great examples from different authors from many countries, but still none of them was about our own experience, because I think that every nation who is suffering from war, we have our own experience.
And we know that many I think all of the parents would like to protect their children from such a hard topics and such a hard thing like war or talking for hard topics, but it's not the best way, because children absorb more information and more information than we can expect, and we cannot hide them from reality. And we believed that the book, actually picture book, it's one of the best way to start the sincere conversation between children and parents about what is war is, what war is, and how to deal with it. So it was like our intention to create this book for this sincere talk.
Years later, I volunteered at a telephone crisis centre called Lifeline. And we would often receive telephone calls from children and teenagers talking about a whole range of issues. One of the things that came up quite regularly was that a number of these children that were calling us also felt very lonely. They didn't think that there were children within their peer group, their age range, that they were connecting with. And so when I set out to make this book like Chris, I was actually making it as the map that I felt that I needed as a very young and lonely boy, but also with the hope that it would connect with other kids who grew up in similar circumstances.
Bear, said Rat, I've been wondering, will we always hold hands like this, even when we are old and wrinkly and tottering up this hill? Of course we will, said Bear. As long as you hold mine when my fur turns grey and starts to fall out. I'll even hold your tail so you don't trip over.
書嘅，因為咧有兩位作者咧，佢嘅書係好好嘅。咁一陣間咧，我哋嘅安排會係咁樣。首先啦，曉文啦，同埋 Samson 咧，佢每個人咧都會安排咗講佢自己嘅書啦，同埋佢點解要做呢一件事咧？佢有一個 presentation， 每人咧會有一個30分鐘嘅 section。咁首先會曉文之內請曉文上嚟預備先。咁跟住Samson 咧就會有第二個 section 啦。咁 完咗之後咧，咁我哋3個咧會上台啦，咁我哋就會有一個會有個 dialogue。就會講下佢哋嗰2本書啦，同埋喺呢幾年裏邊關於香港、關於文化、關於保育嘅唔同嘅討論。咁我覺得今日台上邊我同埋佢哋2位都幾得意嘅 chemistry， 咁希望大家會 enjoy。咁我時間就交俾曉文先。
其實圍呢個字咧，你可以睇到咧係一個會意字嚟㗎。當我哋去追本溯源嘅時候，其實喺西周時期嘅今日，我哋可以睇到圍呢個字咧係有一雙手，好似將一啲好珍貴嘅嘢送俾人咁樣。咁我自己係即係住喺香港，即係呢個城市度長大嘅時候，我就覺得其實有好多嘢係前人留俾我哋一啲好珍貴嘅一啲寶藏咁樣啦。我特別中意圍一個意思就係圍風啊，即係有啲舊時代留低嘅一啲文化特點，或者留落嚟嘅一啲好美好嘅一啲風氣咁樣咯。咁但係咧，我想講喺香港咧，中意探索舊事物嘅其實唔係即係老人家咯。咁我本身咧，我自己有個 Facebook 嘅 page 啦，就叫做香港為美，咁就大約係19年成立嘅。咁而家就大約7萬個 followers 啦。當我睇翻啲 stat 嘅時候，其實當中嘅讀者群大部分咧都係25到34歲啦，即係我自己個 range 啦。而女士咧係女性咧係大約佔60%，男士係40%左右嘅。咁我睇到其實懷古唔係老人家嘅專利，其實好多年輕人好似我唔敢講自己年輕人咁，但係咧好多即係同我差唔多年紀嘅人，其實都會好喜歡一啲古舊嘅事物。咁但係我覺得其實佢哋當中面對嗰個舊咧，有時候佢哋唔係去懷念佢哋嘅過去，而係咧佢哋喺度嘗鮮或者係獵奇。我覺得呢個心態係幾得意，因為咧，當我 share 啲相嘅時候，好多人話佢哋係唔知道香港係咁，係未曾見過呢一面嘅。咁我就覺得，咦？呢個就同即係啲人去揾佢回憶，其實係有少少唔同嘅喎。咁呢個咧？利和稱號咧就喺油麻地嘅一間鋪頭啦。佢話就話一間鋪頭，其實佢只不過係一幅牆嚟嘅。佢係用一個靠牆牌嘅一個牌照去 run 啦。咁何老太其實佢已經係80幾歲，佢依然都喺度。其實講真，佢每日嘅生意都真係冇乜嘅，即係間唔中有啲遊客可能行下或者影下相咁樣啦。咁但係呢間鋪頭係佢爸爸留落嚟俾佢嘅。咁好多人會覺得喺今日即係咁樣嘅世界，即係有電子磅或者有啲咁方便、咁精確嘅一啲嘅量度嘅工具嘅時候，點解我哋仲需要一啲即係稱咧用嚟做乜咧？咁其實稱，我覺得呢樣嘢咧係好即係好首先啦以前嘅重量係點樣量度嘅咧？就係即係古代咧，其實咧就係春秋時期有個科學家嘅魯班啦，咁佢就根據呢個北斗七星同埋南斗七星就定咗13個星花，咁就以前咧其實1斤係13兩嘅，咁但係幾時1斤變到16兩咧？就係秦始皇佢統一咗6國，佢商鞅變法之後統一呢個度量衡，於是1斤就變成16兩，咁嗰3個咧就係福祿壽3個星。其實咧個意思係如果你稱嘅話咧，即係唔誠實，你就會損福折壽。咁我覺得原來即係呢啲咁古老嘅一啲嘅量度重量嘅一個工具入邊都有少少嘅即係價值觀擺咗喺入邊啦。咁但係隨住1976年即係香港已經開始實行呢個要同世界接軌，咁就推行呢個十進制之後，其實佢哋已經仲有冇佢哋存在嘅空間，就真係冇乜啦。咁但係呢間鋪佢依然都喺度啦。其實你見佢每一日咧好似砌嗰啲俄羅斯方塊咁樣開鋪收鋪咧，係好神奇嘅一個畫面啦。
I just asked why you got so much sex. I'm just saying that there is a lot of sex if people are interested in that. I'm selling you to the audience.
You can have 50 Shades of Malay.
No. I was saying it's medium spice level. Don't expect it to be like, dicks out. Like it's very tasteful.
There's sex, definitely sex, but there's no description of orifices or anything like that.
Disappointingly.
Yeah, very disappointing.
Sorry.
Second book. What?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a stupid little story. So the first book reading I ever did, because I have parents who fortunately are still alive, even though I'm old, they decided to come, and then they came with my even older uncle and auntie, who are in their really late 80s, and they sit in the front row of lit books, which is very small.
And they also speak good English.
Yes, and they've never read the book, and then whoever it is goes, okay, read. I'm like, chapter 1.
This picture was taken in April 2003 in a press conference to pay tribute to Leslie Zhang, who committed suicide. And when we wrote about her and researched about her, a question that frequently came to my mind was that what kind of society was able to create a superstar like her? Her songs and movies in those days in the 80s have gone really global. To me, those days were when Hong Kong embraced talent, creativity, and pursued international exposure. That's why she was also so popular in many places in Asia. And what makes her shine is also her devotion to charities and her perseverance in her last battle with cervical cancer.
The Mormon Church attempted to do the same thing with Orgumtong's house further up the road. A government buyout at that point was possible because in the wake of SARS the property value was low, so they were prepared to do that. These days it would be completely impossible. So it was something which they could do at that point in time, and it is to that woman's enduring credit that she did step in at that point. Much of the better issues on the government plot ratio and so on come from her time as Secretary for Development. So credit where credit's due. She doesn't deserve much for that sum.
Yeah, I just want to ask a little question. Anyone knows about its status now? When I did the research, I found out that a group, actually a think tank in Nature, won the bid last year to revamp it to a place for Chinese tea and herbal medicine. So after 16 years, it's still closed to the public. So photos like this took us through the history to reflect the city's path of heritage conservation.
And of course the other challenge with buildings like this, and it comes into Haw Villa and numerous others, it was built as a private house. So what do you do with it next? And the same thing with the police station up the road. It's built as a police station and lockup. So what do you do with afterwards? Adaptive reuse is always a challenge with that. Particularly with this, or Haw Villa, it's way on an isolated road, so issues of access, parking and so on, it becomes very, very difficult for an adaptive reuse to be successful.
Are you ready for our first speaker? Are you ready? Are you ready, Jenny? I'm not sure if I'm ready. Anyway, the first poem I'm reading is one of mine, and actually is dedicated to Leung Ping Kwan. We arrived on the same day, you in the hold of a fishing junk, me on the ocean liner. Settling into a 3-story house, the shipping crates were delivered by noon. Discarded, they made a hut for you on the hill. We lived on either side of the same street, kept apart by the wall between, a physical and symbolic shield to prevent disease or going native. We tried to connect, but concrete and closed minds are tough to conquer, a barrier for inhibitions carelessly thrown. Not so for hurled rocks and insults. We flew kites across the top, swooping and dancing as one, the caress, then the cut of the string. We learned each other's tongue through jagged gaps. Good morning, Zhou San. How are you? Nei hao ma. What's your name? Nei giu mat ye meng. Well, fuck your mother. Diu lei lo mo. We left home together for school, you on foot, me on the bus, attending classes at either end of another street, both burdened by the hopes and expectations of another generation. We arrived on the same day, grew up together, apart, one colony, 2 systems, 2 people, 1 future.
The opportunity of the novel technique wasn't that it existed, it was the fact that it was still essentially unknown. From what I could understand when I looked up his original paper, Dr. Chan's algorithm, when it was linked to ordinary DNA testing input, would create amazing, almost instantaneous results. The dream of fraternity lawyers and vice squads were worldwide. But nobody seemed to ever have heard of it. The reasons for its obscurity became clearer when I did a quick search for Dr. Chan on LinkedIn, only to find he had no profile. Surprised, I checked on Twitter, and then in desperation, perhaps he was really old, on Facebook. Check this out, I remarked to the guy sitting next to me. Here's some researcher I'm looking into, and he's like the last man in Hong Kong who has no social media. When the other student didn't answer, I looked up and saw that he had already left. Ghosting can happen in real life just as easily as it does online.
She talks. She always wants to be heard.
When she asks, she always wants to be first. When she argues, she always wants to win. When she dresses up, she always wants to be the first most beautiful. Her vanity, sure, and strength. Her selfishness clothes her mind. Her arrogance blinds her to her shortcomings.
He ordered 2 dirty martinis, but he always remained alone and never touched the second glass. Almost nothing changed except for the color of his shirt. Blue, white, pink, white, blue. Once in a while, he would order a new drink, turn the whole glass over and write line after line, until the sand was done. He would sip his cocktail while observing his surroundings. Our exchanges never lasted more than a few seconds. I always had a dozen of customers to attend.